as well that the last.
It is always quite a nice thing to see. But yes, so Jupiter, brilliant telescopic object. Go out there and have a look. Moving on to everyone's favourite planet Saturn. So this planet reaches opposition this month on 27th of August. Saturn is at opposition. That means it's opposite to the Sun in the sky and due south at midnight. So on the 1st of August, Saturn reaches quite a high position under relatively dark skies, but this will improve throughout the month. And its highest point in the sky is 25 degrees up, as seen from the centre of the UK.
Yeah.
That may not seem like much, but compare this with what was it, 18, 17 degrees a few years?
It got down to about 14, I think.
Yeah.
It was about lower, something like that.
I had a brief, during those miserable years, I got a 14-minute view of Saturn as it passed between houses, and that was it. So this is much better.
Much better indeed. And of course, because we are at opposition, as you say, on the 27th of August, there is an effect to look out for, which is called the opposition effect with Saturn. And it's basically occurs because all the particles which make up Saturn's rings, they're not particularly large particles, but several meters or so across, typically chunks of water ice, they cast shadows. And those shadows, when Saturn is away from opposition, can be seen. You can't see them individually, but you can see the net effect of them. And that dims the rings, basically. But as it goes to opposition, the shadows line up with the particle that's casting them. So the shadow becomes hidden behind that particle, and all you see is the bright face of the shadow casting particles. So the rings appear to brighten, and that can be quite noticeable, can't it?
I find it very marked, actually. And what tends to happen is the middle ring, the B ring of Saturn's got 3 rings, the outer A ring, the B ring in the middle, and the darker crepe ring, C ring at the edge there. I find that details in the B ring kind of disappear visually a little bit at opposition, because the B ring is so bright because of the effect you've just mentioned. So, and it really is a couple of days before and a couple of days after opposition, you notice this opposition effect. So if you don't get a clear night on opposition night, the night before, the night after, you should be able to see it.
One thing that is working slightly against us at the moment with Saturn, as it gets higher in the sky, of course, is that the tilt is reducing quite markedly.
Yes.
It'll only be about 8 degrees, so the rings will appear relatively flattish, won't they?
Yeah, they will. But the interesting thing there is that we'll be able to see a lot more of the southern hemisphere of Saturn than we have been before, because of the tilt, as you mentioned. Saturn's rings have been covering up the vast majority of the southern hemisphere on Saturn. So we've had no idea what's been going on there during this time. And now the rings have closed up a bit. We should get better views. We should be able to see the southern equatorial belt, which I don't think I've seen for about 8 years on Saturn. So,
and I'm presuming that when the rings, because the rings cast quite a big shadow onto that hemisphere of the planet, as they move out of the way, that will change the weather.
Yeah, well, but there's all these effects to play. For a start, the shadow you've just mentioned, I saw that properly for the first time last year after an absence of many years, because the rings were tilted so far open. You couldn't really see visually that shadow. But now they've tilted quite a long way again, and now they're quite shallow. The shadow of the rings on the globe, as it's called, will be very, very noticeable, and it will be interesting to see if there's any effects on the local climate of Saturn's weather as a result of that.
Absolutely. Okay, well, let's carry on out further into the solar system. So we've got the planet Uranus, which is best to see at the end of the month